Okay, we are live. Welcome. This is
Good
our
good to
first
be
video.
here, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to have you on for this first initial video and to come to explore some of the topics that we have been talking about for the past year together. Because I think some of it is so transformative and really has been so impactful for me. So I know we talked about this first session being about fear, and I wanted to share and start with something we had talked about, and you had told me a few weeks ago, which was that most people think about in the context of pollution, emissions, or some other ways of like what pollutants are, but that the largest pollution on the planet is fear, and
It's
how that permeates
human fear.
human fear, exactly. And I was so struck by that and remembered that it's that pervasive, that I wanted us to start our discussion with that and diving into that a bit, because I know a lot of our discussions revolve around fear and the opposite of that and how that affects our decisions. So yeah, so I want to start with that, just to give a little context. Helen Kramer is a energy healer and a therapist, and someone who I've been working with for over a year on my own challenges and working with weekly, and has been really life-changing. So thank you so much again for joining today.
Okay, so most people don't know that our brain is wired for fear. We have a hair trigger fear response. People know it as fight, flight, or freeze response because all organisms have to be able to react quickly to fear in order to survive. But our brains have not evolved to meet our current life challenges. So most of us who are here today are not living in mortal danger, but the brain can't tell the difference between what we call a stress or a challenge and mortal danger. So it takes signals and shunts them into the fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain, thinking that it's going to help us to survive. But in that part of our brain, we only have the brain power of a frightened 3-year-old. So when you brought up, my remark about pollution, we don't realize that when we're being critical and judgmental, especially in our own self-talk, like I'm stupid, I look ugly, I'm fat, all that, um, all of those judgmental and critical remarks are fear-based. Like I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And I always believe that every behavior has a positive intent. So if I ask somebody, well, when you're telling yourself that you're stupid or you're lazy, what's your positive intent? Well, the positive intent is to motivate myself. The unfortunate thing is, if you can imagine, if you had a precious child you were taking care of or a good friend, would you try to motivate them by ridiculing them or demeaning them? It doesn't really work to inspire people. And everything in the world has energy. Our medications have energy. Our food has energy. So does our thoughts. And I don't. I want to explain it. Ryan, do you know who Dr. Emoto is?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Go online. EMOTO. He's a photographer, and I have a glass of water here. So he would take a glass of water and he'd put a word facing in like love or compassion, and then he'd freeze the water, and then he'd take a high power camera and he would shoot the crystals that the water formed from having that word outside. And when you have a loving word or a compassionate word, the crystals are beautiful. But if you put a word like hate or Hitler on the glass in any language, you get these very ugly, disorganized crystals. And so the energy from the words has power. And we
Carry
don't,
weight.
yes, and it affects us. And just because we
Mhm.
can't see the energy in our thoughts, we take it for granted that it's okay to say those things. But now think of the human body. It's 99% water. So if you're saying to yourself, you're stupid, every cell in your body is receiving that negative information and reacting to it. So, and when, if I judge somebody else or I judge myself, the frequency of those thoughts goes out into the universe. And we're not aware that we're picking up that energy, but we are. So for me, the greatest pollutant is our fear that comes through as judgmental or critical or harsh judgments about people. And we're not aware that we're picking it up. But just as an example, if you watch a nature program and a predator comes into a herd of animals, they signal each other in a millisecond to flee. So the energy is transmitted and they pick it up and quickly they flee because that's life-saving. Well, when we're putting out,
pick it up in the,
they pick up the energy.
Sorry, they pick it up energy of it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think it's really.
Go ahead.
Sorry, stepping over you. I kind of found it really interesting because we talked about a year ago, some of your, the derivation that you had mentioned was that if we think about it, every word or action that we say either comes from fear or love. And I've had a lot of that exploration myself, even coming out, I'm broadcasting from the boat that I'm in. But I realized that I had my own fear about taking it out. And I didn't recognize that until this season. And so just having that recognition, I think, helps transform that about how I go into it. Like knowing that that has been part of the past and has kept me from pulling the trigger and taking it out more, whatever that action may be. If you're aware of it, that you're doing that, it's coming from that, then you can choose the opposite and put yourself in a different state.
Yeah, I believe that there are two states of being. So if you look at a newborn baby, they're born in peace and love. And that's the natural state. But let's say this baby is living in a family where there's a lot of fighting. What happens to the baby, instead of staying centered in the heart, it goes into fear because it feels endangered when you feel all that energy around you. And all kids of all ages pick up, even, I don't know how many couples I've worked with who say, well, we never fought in front of the kids. And the kids picked it up just by the way they interacted with each other. Even when they weren't fighting, they could pick up the tension, they could pick up the fear or the hostility. So what happens to most of us is that since life for most of us isn't perfect, we start to shunt our center into the fear part of the brain. And then we see everything through the lens of fear. I better watch out. This might be dangerous. That might be dangerous. And so we're constantly reliving pain and trauma from childhood, even when it's not happening now. So what the brain does is it takes the past, it spreads it into the present, and then projects it into the future. So what happens is we don't ever have a present because the mind is saying, watch out for that, plan for that, avoid that. And so most people's thoughts, and everybody listening, you can think of your thoughts. How many of your thoughts are coming from love or peace or compassion? And how many of your thoughts are watch out, what if, fear thoughts? And the unfortunate thing is that fear... Excuse me?
Sorry, is that the best way, or how would you talk to people about like identifying? So how you know like where it's coming from and to really have that reflection?
Well, if you close your eyes and go inside and feel, what's your energy like when you're saying this? Like if I'm saying to myself, you look ugly today, I can feel that energy. It almost feels like my head got tight when I said it. It's a kind of contracted energy. But if I say something like, my life is joyful or my life is peaceful, everything feels expansive. So you can, if you go inside, you can get a sense of what your energy is like. So in the healing work,
that's a great.
yeah, to be aware, because the problem is that what I'm talking, we live in a very judgmental society, so we're used to it. I mean, if you listen, if you listen to a lot of the comedy, it's about being judgmental, critical about the way people look, somebody's fat, whatever. So it's so much part of the culture that we're almost immune to it. But if you stop and think, what is it, what do you feel? If somebody else said to you, you look ugly today, how would you feel? But we get so hypnotized into feeling this is normal. So when we say to ourselves, you look ugly, or you're stupid, it doesn't, we don't get the impact of it. So again,
Right.
one litmus test is what if you said to, again, a child that you loved or a good friend that you loved, if you said the same thing to them that you say to yourself, how would it feel to say that? And most people are aghast when they think of saying what they say to themselves to somebody they love.
Right. And so you realize how much that affects you and the decisions you're making. And I think part of the comment about the greatest pollution on the planet being fear was that from as an individual basis, if you're telling yourself, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, whether that means that you don't start your own business or you don't go for that person that you're really into. But then on the larger scale, a CEO that is fearful that it's going to spend $2 more for a product that's more sustainable doesn't do that because of a fear-based concern that their company is not going to be able to make it. When you're looking at it, and then presidents or people heads of state that are making fear-based or decisions based on fear, you really see the full scale of how this is really manifest and is a part of decisions that affect millions.
I don't think there's a problem on the planet that wouldn't be eradicated if people weren't frightened. The fear, and one of the problems too, we're not educated enough about the brain. The brain is designed for homeostasis. It's designed to conserve energy by staying the same. So people get afraid of making a change. Well, so when you listen to, climate deniers, they're afraid the economy won't be good. Whatever their lifestyle will be affected. So, and one of the very unfortunate observations is that whenever we act out of fear, we bring about the thing we're afraid of. So the people that are climate deniers, that are afraid of their life changing, well, it has to change with the direction that the environment is going in. So, and I know a different kind of example. Whenever I remember a woman coming in just distraught because she saw on Facebook that the man that she was involved with was with another woman. And so I asked her, when did you first suspect that he wasn't faithful? And she said, all along, I doubted it. So then the question is, well, then why did you stay? I was afraid of being alone. I didn't want to have to start all over again. But again, when you act out of fear, so she stayed with somebody who she knew couldn't be a good partner, and then ultimately he wasn't a good partner. And so it was her fear that actually precipitated the thing she was afraid of. Did that make sense, or was that too convoluted?
Right.
So
yeah, I said that. It kind of reminded me of that if you are fearful of it and you're thinking of it constantly, you're gonna kind of attract that to you. And I remember my mom passed 6 years ago from cancer, and I was there taking care of her. And my grandmother also passed away of cancer, but much older, when she was 80. My mom was 56. But on her deathbed, essentially, she said, I always knew for the past 30 years I was going to get cancer. And so she had this fear all the time of getting it. Now, how much of that actually manifested it or biological, I'm sure there was maybe a component of both. but the fact that she always felt that she was going to get it, not just she didn't think it would be that soon, talks about like living with a fear for 30 years that you're going to get
But
something,
those thoughts impact
and how that
ourselves.
manifests.
When you look at genetics, you can have a gene for something. Like if you have a gene for a certain kind of cancer, you're born with that gene. What triggers it at a particular time? Now, it could be things like pollution or whatever, but it also can be the pollution that your thoughts are creating. And so when you're having fearful thoughts or doom and gloom thoughts, your body is producing chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol. Those things are deleterious to your health. So there's somebody very well known named Bruce Lipton. He wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. And he was a cell biologist teaching at a medical school. And when he got more into understanding the function of cells, he realized that his own self-talk affected his cells, and he was seriously depressed. And he started changing his self-talk, and then he worked through his depression. So again, our self-talk is so subtle because we're used to it that we don't realize the impact it's having. So
Right, absolutely.
And then,
well, you want to go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one way of bringing the point home, I said, say it to somebody else. I look at all behavior on a continuum. Okay, so if you're a so-called nice person, then you're mostly saying negative things to yourself. But one of my life observations is that if you use the judgmental muscle, you're going to be doing other people, and then you live in a world where you're expecting it to be done with you. So as a nice person, I would judge myself, then I would look at people and make, silent judgments until I train myself out of it. Because when you're judging yourself or other people, you're destroying your humanity. So I had an experience when I was working on this years ago of sitting across from a woman on a subway. And she had garish makeup and garish clothes. And I felt myself making a judgment. I said, okay, that's what I call peel the onion. Okay, so this woman got dressed in the morning and she wanted to look good. Well, that's what happens. That's what I do when I get dressed in the morning. That's what looked good to her. But her positive intent was to look good. And then all of a sudden you feel that humanity, we're all the same. We're just in different ways that we do things, different ways we get attention, different ways we show caring. So, but again, to make it even more maybe vital, on this continuum, so if I'm judging myself and then I'm silently judging other people, this one's fat, this one's doing whatever it is, if you go up the continuum, it's the same continuum that the neo-Nazi is on and the white supremacist. It's saying you're not good enough. So I say I'm not good enough, let's say because I look a certain way, but they're saying you're not good enough because your skin is this color or your religion. But it's the same toxic behavior. It's toxic to you when you do it. You're putting it out in the environment and polluting it. And then you're living in that toxic energy yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that's I think a really wonderful way comparison of like being on that continuum. So for people that maybe not having somebody to work with on a weekly basis or somebody to bounce things off of, and I know you gave that one example of saying it to yourself and seeing how that feels in your body. What is another way or another couple ways that people can think through, like identifying when they're being judgmental or when they are having negative talk or just when they're feeling fears that they should be aware of, that they can know to shifting that mindset, those words, that behavior?
Well, one of the things that I intuited, and it happens to be been proven by neuroscience, is that the best way to change behavior is to replace a pattern that doesn't feel good with one that does feel good. So if you want to change, even if you're not fully aware of how you're being negative, try to create a positive experience. Like if you were in nature, like if you feel the sun on your skin, or you're lying on the beach, to help you learn what it feels like to be peaceful. Because the more you know that, the clearer it will become when you're being critical, because you'll have a contrast. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
So like I said before, the two states are either in heart energy or fear. So if you practice heart energy, like you could have had a pet as a child, or you have a pet now, and you know what, with that pet, you know what it's like to feel unconditional love. Your pet isn't judging you. So, and what's tricky about this is when I was talking about that baby before, so the baby is born in peace and has these receptors that are just open for taking in. But if there's a lot of, let's say, anger in the family, the receptors shut down. And what happens is that we stay shut down. So one of the most important things is to learn how to receive. So if it's a pet, don't do it with a romantic relationship, because they're too contaminated. You don't want to be dependent on a romantic partner for your well-being, because that recreates the parent-child relationship, and the power dynamic isn't good. But if you feel the sun or a pet, and you say, okay, I'm just taking this in. What do you feel like when you feel the unconditional love from your cat or your dog? And then just go inside and breathe into it. And what I call savor it. Do you feel warm in your chest? Do you feel like the muscles in your shoulder and your neck relax, and you feel a sense of peace? And just keep savoring and savoring it, because when we're feeling something, not thinking it, when we're feeling something, we're producing feel-good neurotransmitters, hormones, endorphins, and new neural pathways for those feel-good chemicals to travel on. Now, simultaneously, we're extinguishing the feel-good neural pathway, feel-bad neural pathways, and the feel-bad chemicals. So if we practice one, it replaces the other. So if your brain is saying you're ugly, and what it really wants to do is motivate you to look better, so you can find people that love you, and then you'll feel peaceful because you'll feel love. If you go into nature or go with a pet and you feel peaceful, then you learn that peace is already there. It doesn't come from somebody loving you, so that you're not addicted to a person. You're not addicted to looking good, because you know that the peace is already there. So if you can feel that, then you can feel the difference when you're being critical.
Yeah, that reminds me, I think the first time I heard you speak was at the assemblage, and we did an exercise kind of going on this fear, the contrast essentially was that when you're in a spiral, or when you're feeling a certain way, to have a memory or a moment that you felt the most at peace and ease, and to remember that, to go into that feeling and imagine yourself there. So maybe you can just dive into that quickly, and then we can kind of close off this one, because I thought that was a kind of a cool exercise that was simple, that I used several times.
And again, just to savor the feeling, because you don't want it to be a thought. If you're thinking about how nice something was, it doesn't change your brain. But if you actually feel sensations in your body, that's how you physiologically change your brain and your nervous system.
Yeah, so mine, I'll just share mine. I think we can put some context. So when we talked about it, what was a time that you could feel the most at ease and peaceful and joyful? For me, I immediately went to swimming in Fire Island on the beach and submersed in water with the sun on my skin. And I just felt, we took like a good 5 minutes, and that may be an exercise people can do afterward, is to sit for a few minutes and just feel what the sensation feels like in your mind, going back to that moment, how your whole energetic, emotional, and mental state was, to really connect with that sensation and feeling, to know what that feels like, so that when you do feel off, you can go back to that.
Well, I'm going to amend that a little bit. If you practice that, and don't wait till you feel off, because if you were trying to learn a foreign language, you wouldn't want to wait till you got to the country that they were speaking that language. You want to practice it over and over again, so it becomes reflexive. So you want to practice these what I call desired states over and over again. And then you realize, oh, I don't need somebody else to make me feel good. I don't need a substance to make me feel good. I know how to do it. And if you teach young people how to do it, they don't get involved in substances.
Right. Yeah. And I've been hearing from people that have been doing a lot more substances during this time because, they're bored or it's something that's helping them cope. So I think doing this is a much more, natural way to help us, like you said, train ourselves.
Yeah, I had the experience because in New York, we had such cold, rainy weather for so long, and I wanted the sun. So I said, okay. I closed my eyes and I remembered walking down to the beach and how beautiful it was when I would just get there and see the sand and the ocean. And I just closed my eyes and felt the whole thing. And then it felt like my whole room lit up and I wasn't affected by the gray weather. Because I changed my juice, all the feel good, the serotonin, the dopamine. We can produce it on our own if we if we train ourselves.
So again, that's like really our training of our mental, our physiological. So
and we can train.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I want to keep these kind of short and sweet. So I know we're going to continue doing different topics each week. But I think this was really a great initial conversation on fear, something that we've had many times. So again, I really thank you for testing and playing around with me on this.
Oh, I love, me, I love to play, right? Life is only about play. No heaviness.
I love that. Life is about play. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you, Helen. Appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.